From the queen who once set an entire town ablaze using nothing but birds, to the woman who may well have been history's most prolific serial killer, today we'll be looking at some of the most ruthless queens the world has ever known. Number 12. Irene of Athens. Let's begin today's story with a particularly gruesome punishment. Blinding, because it seems that no ancient royal legend is complete without someone losing their eyes. This time, our focus is on Irene of Athens. She was born around the year 750, and although little is known about her childhood, it's clear she came from a family with significant political influence. That meant she was almost certainly destined to be swept into the violent intrigues that defined politics of the era. It's possible she was an orphan taken in by her family's leader, Constantine Sarantos, AD, a nobleman among Athens' ruling elite. Irene later married the son of Byzantine Emperor Constantine V, IMD. This son, named Leo, may have chosen her in a traditional bride selection ceremony. Contemporary accounts suggest Irene possessed striking beauty. Together, they had one son. When the emperor died, Leo ascended to the throne, and Irene became empress. It all seemed promising at first, but in the Byzantine court, peace was always an illusion. When Leo died, Irene assumed the role of regent, as her son, only 9 years old, was far too young to rule on his own. That put him in a perilous position, surrounded by ambitious members of the imperial family who believed they were better suited for the throne. Faced with this reality, Irene did what any regent of the time was forced to do. She sought out strong allies. She began expelling people from Constantinople in large numbers, and on occasion, had troublemakers flogged for defying her authority. Those loyal to Irene remained in favor, while dissenters were banished or beaten until they changed their tune. As regent, she showed a keen appetite for power, even going so far as to have her image minted on the empire's coins, an honor traditionally reserved for emperors alone. It's worth remembering that being a female regent in those days was extraordinarily dangerous, with no shortage of rivals eager to see you dead. Take the case of Empress Martina, the last female regent before Irene. After only a year in power, she was accused of poisoning someone. Her punishment was to have her tongue cut out. Her sons had their noses slit before the entire family was exiled to a remote island. Irene knew that story well. She ruled with calculated skill, building crucial alliances. But as her son grew older, the bond between them began to fracture. Eventually, the young emperor openly rebelled. Irene initially defeated him and forgave him. But when he once again tried to overthrow her and fled to the provinces, her forces captured him and returned him to the palace. Ignoring his pleas for mercy, Irene coldly ordered that he be blinded on the spot. Without skilled surgeons or infection control, it's likely he didn't survive the ordeal. For a mother to watch her son endure such a fate is shocking. But in those times, it was not entirely unheard of. Irene was eventually overthrown and exiled to an island, where she lived for about a year before dying. According to accounts, she spent her final days earning a living by spinning wool. By then, she was likely in her mid to late 40s. Number 11. Maria Eleonora. Maria Eleonora, a name that sounds elegant and refined, though her nickname, Maria the Monster, might be more fitting. Her story begins in the early 17th century, when King Gustavus Adolphus of Sweden was searching for a wife. The king had originally wanted to marry a woman named Ebba Brahe, but his mother forbade it. The two continued to exchange letters, yet their romance ultimately came to nothing. Then the king heard about a 17-year-old young woman who was said to be the most beautiful in the region. That was Maria Eleonora. She was well liked by many, though historians believe she had a streak of excessive indulgence. She had a particular fondness for theatrical performances staged by people with severe mental illnesses or by actors with dwarfism. Essentially, she enjoyed mocking those who were different from herself. Perhaps because of this, misfortune seemed to find her early. Maria suffered a miscarriage, and the event appeared to send her into a downward spiral. She became paranoid and violent, a dangerous combination. She later gave birth to a child, but the baby died before reaching its first birthday. Meanwhile, the king desperately needed an heir, yet he spent most of his time on the battlefield. If he were killed without a son to succeed him, the throne would be left vacant, an immense pressure that weighed heavily on Maria. Eventually, they had a daughter, but the child was born with a hereditary condition that caused her body to be covered in hair. Feeling as though she had given birth to a yeti, Maria completely lost her grip on reality. The first words she spoke upon holding her daughter were, "Take it away from me. I will not raise this monster." She became pregnant again, but before her belly had even begun to show, she suffered a boating accident and miscarried once more. She longed for a son, but had only the one daughter she had despised from the moment she was born. When Christina, Maria's daughter, was 7 years old, her father died. Maria placed the blame squarely on the child she already loathed. For an entire year, she confined Christina to a dark room and ordered the household staff not to allow even a single ray of light inside. The most horrific detail was that, for a time, the king's body was kept in an open casket directly on the bed, and Maria forced Christina to sleep beside it. By this point, Maria had descended into complete madness. Christina was eventually removed from her mother's custody. Maria had become the very definition of a mother from hell, though it's likely she was suffering from a severe mental illness. Number 10. Marie Antoinette. A beautiful yet ruthless queen, Marie Antoinette lived in unimaginable luxury in France, even as tens of thousands of her people starved to death. The staggering injustice and vast inequality of that era helped ignite one of the greatest revolutions in history. When we speak of inequality, we mean the kind where nobles lived in opulent country estates boasting 50 lavishly decorated rooms, while the poor could not afford even a crust of bread each day. According to a famous anecdote, in 1789, while a servant was combing the queen's hair, someone entered the room and reported that the people were starving because there was no bread. Marie allegedly replied, "Let them eat cake." She was so out of touch with reality that she supposedly believed her subjects could simply eat expensive pastries instead. Historians generally agree that she probably never said those words, or, if she did, it was highly unlikely. The story may have been invented simply to illustrate the selfishness of the aristocracy. Still, the truth was damning enough. Marie spent extravagant sums on luxuries while her people went hungry, and she even drew money from the national treasury. On top of that, she was rumored to lead a scandalously decadent lifestyle. So, when she appeared at the Place de la Révolution on the day of her execution, it was no surprise that the event became a public spectacle. By then, she was the most hated woman in France. At around 12:15 the afternoon, her head was placed on the guillotine, and Number 9. Elizabeth Bathory. Though she was a countess rather than a queen, her story absolutely earns a place on this list. Records suggest she had almost no trace of humanity left when it came to the cruelty she inflicted on others. She despised her servants and would often torture or even kill them for the smallest of infractions. She went so far as to have an entire chamber constructed specifically for torture, her workspace for daily atrocities. In the late 16th and early 17th centuries, Bathory used her power to lure peasants to her castle, especially beautiful young girls, believing that their blood would help her maintain her youth. At times, she would even bite her victims with her own teeth like a wild animal. After hundreds of people had died, suspicion began to grow, particularly because disposing of the bodies became increasingly difficult. As she grew older, Bathory became convinced that the blood of peasants was no longer effective. She ordered her servants to seek out young women of noble blood instead. These were far harder to find, so her attendants dressed up peasants in fine clothes and passed them off as aristocrats. Eventually, even with all her power, the authorities could no longer ignore the rumors. An investigation uncovered numerous mutilated bodies around the castle, some clearly bearing marks of having been bitten. The case shocked the nation. Around 300 witnesses came forward, many claiming they had sent their daughters to see the countess, only for the girls to never return. The servants who helped her kidnap victims were beheaded, but Bathory herself, being too wealthy and powerful, was spared execution. Instead, she was imprisoned for life inside a luxurious castle. We may never know the exact number of her victims, but estimates suggest it could have been as many as 650. Number 8. Wu Zetian. Wu Zetian was a Chinese ruler whom historians, at various points in time, have called a tyrant queen. She was born on the 17th of February, 624, and rose to power during the Tang dynasty. While she may have had an authoritarian streak, in that era, bloodshed was almost inseparable from the throne. Still, it must be acknowledged that she reduced corruption and implemented a number of positive economic reforms. In some respects, she was an effective leader. Her path to power, however, was murky. She first entered the imperial court as a concubine of Emperor Gaozong of Tang. Once there, she systematically eliminated her rivals to ensure she would one day become empress. Some historians write that, in order to secure her position, she may have even murdered 2 of her own children, though such claims remain unproven. Once her power was firmly established, she protected it with ruthless efficiency, punishing any form of criticism. Those who dared oppose her could expect exile or execution. It seems this continued for much of her life, though such severity was far from unusual among rulers of the time. Number 7. Maria I. Known as the first queen regnant of Portugal, she was called Maria the Pious in her homeland. But in Brazil, where she also reigned, she was given a far less flattering title, Maria the Mad. The eldest daughter of King Dom José, she took the throne in 1777 upon her father's death. She was married to King Dom Pedro III, but as the rightful heir, all real power rested in her hands. At first, she governed fairly well, but her mental health was unstable, and she frequently sank into deep depressions. When her illness flared up, she suffered delusions, lost control, and had to be confined to her residence. The death of her husband only worsened her condition. Much like the Roman Emperor Caligula, who once forced his entire court into mourning for his sister, Maria demanded that everyone observe prolonged mourning for her late husband, disrupting everyday life across the realm. It wasn't long before she could no longer rule at all. She shut herself away in her chambers, where people often heard her screaming uncontrollably. Eventually, she was taken to Brazil, but her condition did not improve. She became nearly bedridden, and it was in this state that she earned her Brazilian nickname of Maria the Mad. She remained like this until her death in 1816. Maria may not have been the most overtly cruel figure on this list, but once her madness took hold, she certainly became one of the worst queens to endure as a ruler. Number 6. Queen Ranavalona I. Queen Ranavalona I ruled Madagascar from 1828 to 1861. After her husband's death, she took the throne and became known for her staunch isolationism, determined to keep European colonial powers at arm's length, a policy that greatly angered Western nations. Many of the more shocking stories about her come from European explorers and may well have been exaggerated. Even so, it's certain that she built a formidable army, though she failed to ensure they were adequately fed and supplied. Soldiers died in staggering numbers from disease, grueling labor, and starvation. Those who opposed her faced the trial by ordeal, a brutal set of punishments meant to determine guilt or innocence. With so many soldiers and civilians dying, Madagascar's population is thought to have been cut nearly in half during her reign, marking one of its darkest historical chapters. She also fiercely persecuted Christians, at times accusing them of witchcraft before subjecting them to torture. It is this religious oppression that has led many historians to label her a tyrant, though some scholars believe the stories have been amplified over time. Number 5. Joanna la Loca. From the very start of her reign, Joanna was considered unfit to rule and largely sidelined from direct governance. As a result, she herself committed no particularly notable acts of cruelty, but the power struggles between her and her family plunged the country into chaos, leaving the poor to die from famine and disease. It's estimated that as much as half the population of Castile perished during those disastrous years. As she aged, her mental state deteriorated further. She believed everyone was out to harm her, even the nuns assigned to care for her. She ate very little, refused to bathe, and would not change her clothes. She may have suffered from a serious mental illness, such as schizophrenia, though it's also possible that political rivals deliberately spread such rumors to justify removing her from power. Some accounts claim she often returned to her husband's coffin, demanding it be opened so she could caress the corpse and kiss his cold feet. Rumors even suggest she traveled with the coffin wherever she went, keeping it under her bed at night. And if you want to understand how she may have descended into such madness, you need only look at her mother. Number 4. Isabella I of Castile. Alongside King Ferdinand II, Isabella reigned over Spain from 1451 to 1504, presiding over the notorious early years of the Spanish Inquisition. While she cannot be held solely responsible for initiating that bloody era, her role was undeniably significant. It was Isabella who issued the mass expulsion decrees that drove Jews and Muslims from the country, while also authorizing the torture of anyone she deemed a threat to her throne. That alone would be enough to brand her as ruthless, but it didn't end there. Many who weren't expelled still faced Inquisition trials, which frequently included torture. And the woman mentioned just above, R.O. Joanna, grew up witnessing her own mother order such punishments. In fact, some say that because Joanna's faith was not deemed strong enough, Isabella would sometimes have her daughter hung from ropes with heavy weights tied to her arms and legs to inflict unbearable pain. In Isabella's eyes, that was the gravest sin a child could commit. Number 3. Princess Olga of Kiev. Princess Olga, who ruled in the 10th century over what is now Ukraine, is remembered for one of the most brutal acts of revenge in history. In 945, her husband, Igor of Kiev, was killed by a tribe known as the Drevlians. Olga's rage over his death was understandable, but the ferocity of her retribution is what made her infamous. When the Drevlians proposed that she marry one of their own, they sent envoys to court her. Olga had all of them buried alive, telling them as they writhed in the earth, "This is my answer." Next, she invited some of the Drevlian leaders to a feast in her palace, pretending goodwill and forgiveness. But when they entered the bathhouse, she had the doors locked and the building set ablaze, burning everyone inside alive. Her vengeance didn't stop there. Olga and her forces went on to slaughter thousands of Drevlians in battle. Those who survived fled into their fortified city, prompting a long siege that left them starving. Olga then devised a cunning plan. She had birds captured from the city, tied bits of cloth soaked in pitch to their legs, and set them alight before releasing them. The birds flew back to their nests in the wooden rooftops, setting the entire city on fire. Anyone who tried to escape was killed on the spot. It stands as one of the most devastating acts of vengeance ever recorded. Olga was not only ruthless but also fervent in promoting Christianity. She was later canonized as a saint in the Eastern Orthodox Church. Number 2. Antarctica. Fredegund, queen consort of King Chilperic I. Fredegund ruled from 584 to 597, and the few surviving historical accounts paint her reign as drenched in blood. She was not of royal birth, but the king became enamored with her when she was still young. However, he married Galswintha instead. Fredegund could not bear this, and either persuaded the king to kill his wife or committed the act herself. In any case, Galswintha was found strangled, almost certainly with Fredegund's involvement. From that point on, she waged a decades-long war against Brunhilde, Galswintha's sister, who had married Sigibert I of Austrasia. Fredegund is believed to have ordered the assassination of Sigibert, and possibly even one of his sons, though that attempt failed. Still, she succeeded in many other assassinations against those she perceived as having insulted her. Her malice extended even to her own daughter, Rigunth. When Rigunth grew into a beautiful young woman, she boasted that she was more worthy to be queen than her mother. The historian Gregory of Tours recounts how Fredegund feigned generosity, leading her daughter to the royal treasury, pointing to a large chest of jewelry and saying, "I'm tired, reach in and take whatever you like." When Rigunth bent over, Fredegund slammed the heavy lid down on her neck, nearly killing her, and would have finished the job if not for servants who rushed in to intervene. Number 1. Mary III of England. Mary I ruled England and Ireland from 1553 to 1558. Her nickname, Bloody Mary, says it all, and has nothing to do with the cocktail of the same name. In her short reign, she sought to reverse England's break from the Roman Catholic Church, a process known as the English Reformation, initiated by her father, King Henry VIII. Upon taking the throne, Mary immediately released many imprisoned Catholics and began exacting revenge. She targeted Protestants, launching what became known as the Marian persecutions. Not only clergymen, but also commoners, women, and even children were executed. Around 300 people were burned at the stake, and more than 30 died in prison awaiting trial. Those who rebelled against her, such as in Wyatt's rebellion, were tortured mercilessly, stretched on the rack, disemboweled, quartered, and their heads displayed on spikes as a warning. Deaths from these uprisings may have reached 200. It was said that the air often hung heavy with the smell of burning flesh from the frequent executions. On the 17th of November, 1558, a group of Protestants scheduled for burning were suddenly spared when a proclamation arrived. The Queen is dead. English law at the time did not permit executions to continue once the monarch had passed. Was Mary truly more ruthless than her European contemporaries? Perhaps not. Her half-sister and successor, Elizabeth I, would later execute people for religious reasons as well. Yet, in the historical memory, the name Bloody Mary remains the most enduring symbol of that grim chapter. The year without a summer. They called it the year without a summer. Across New England, the skies turned gray and frigid. Snow and rain poured relentlessly across Europe. For centuries, historians have puzzled over its cause, while people living through it believed the end of the world had come. The truth was far more terrifying than they imagined. For an entire year, the sun all but vanished. The unrelenting cold decimated harvests and left food supplies in ruins. People starved. Livestock died in staggering numbers. Europe descended into chaos. The riots of 1816 and 1817 were among the bloodiest since the French Revolution, with protest banners that read, "Bread or blood." Strangely enough, this wasn't the first time it had happened. Over 1,000 years earlier, in the year 536, the world was cast into darkness for 18 straight months. It wasn't divine punishment, it was nature's fury. In 1815, Mount Tambora on the island of Sumbawa, Indonesia, erupted with devastating force, the largest volcanic explosion since the disaster of 536. Adding to the chaos, Mount Mayon in the Philippines had also exploded just a year prior. Together, these massive eruptions sent vast clouds of ash into the atmosphere, blocking sunlight and sealing off the earth from the sun's warmth. The burning mountain. Scientists agree that humans first learned to control fire around 1 million years ago. Fire requires 3 elements: fuel, oxygen, and heat. If those 3 elements are supplied endlessly, the flame can, in theory, burn forever. In the state of New South Wales, Australia, there is one mountain that proves exactly that, Mount Wingan, where a fire has burned continuously for at least 5,500 years. That's the confirmed number. Some geologists believe it may have been smoldering for as long as 500,000 years, long before humans ever stepped out of their caves. That eternal fire is the reason the entire mountain is now known as Burning Mountain. Sulfurous smoke rises from deep within the earth, drifting across the sky since the first humans set foot on the Australian continent. The fire has burned for so long that it has transformed a 16-kilometer radius into a scorched red wasteland like a vision of hell itself. This fire lies buried deep underground and has never shown signs of stopping. Scientists believe that thousands of years ago, a coal seam exposed at the surface was struck by lightning and caught fire. Since then, the fire has crept slowly along the seam, advancing at a rate of about 1 meter per year. Today, the blaze has sunk to a depth of 30 meters below the surface, still quietly consuming the coal as poisonous gases continue to seep through cracks in the earth above. Burning Mountain continues to burn, and it will keep burning until the very last of the coal is gone. Thor's Well. Along the coast of Oregon, there exists a natural phenomenon both majestic and perilous, known as Thor's Well. Located just off the side of the Oregon Coastal Highway, this site captivates onlookers with a stunning display. Seawater crashing into a giant stone hole, as if being swallowed whole by the ocean itself. Thor's Well was once a sea cave, long since collapsed, leaving behind a natural drain that resembles a water chute leading into the deep. For those witnessing it for the first time, it appears like a bottomless abyss where waves thunder in with fury before exploding upward and then vanishing down the hole in an instant. Though only about 6 meters deep, it is one of Oregon's most striking natural wonders, but it's also extremely dangerous. During high tide or stormy weather, violent waves can easily sweep bystanders off their feet and straight into the swirling mouth of the well. Anyone who falls in has little chance of survival. The raging waters will drag them into a vortex of foam and fury before devouring them completely. The living rocks of Romania. Near the small town of Costesti in Romania lies a geological phenomenon that has fascinated humans for centuries: massive boulder-like formations known as trovants. These stones appear almost organic in form, as if melting like wet cement. Legend has it they can grow and move as though they possess a spirit. No two trovants are alike. Some are small enough to fit in your pocket, while others tower over 4 meters tall, scattered across more than 20 sites throughout Romania. The most famous collection lies in Costesti, where sand quarrying revealed these extraordinary living stones. But are they truly alive? While locals believe trovants grow over time, science has never recorded them moving on their own. In fact, many have bases firmly rooted in the ground, proving they cannot roll freely. As for their origin, scientists estimate the trovants formed around 6 million years ago, when massive earthquakes compressed sand particles together with natural limestone cement, resulting in tightly bound conglomerates. Their distinctive spherical shape is believed to be the product of sustained seismic activity, with shock waves pounding into sand and limestone sediment, gradually forming the bizarre rounded masses we see today. The ice volcano. In 2021, an extraordinary natural event took place in Kazakhstan, an ice volcano. In the Almaty region, a stream of hot water erupted through a thick layer of ice, creating a spectacle rarely seen in nature. The ice volcano was no small formation. It rose 14 meters high. Scientists believe this phenomenon occurred thanks to a perfect storm of meteorological conditions that, under normal circumstances, would seem almost impossible. At that time, temperatures in Almaty had plunged far below freezing. The ground was coated in dense layers of snow and ice. When a fissure in the earth released a jet of hot water, the stream shot into the air, instantly froze in the bitter cold, and fell back down as shards of ice. Over time, layer after layer built upward into a vertical funnel, resembling a volcano, not one that spewed lava, but a massive frozen geyser. Interestingly, this phenomenon has been recurring nearly every year, turning the site into a seasonal attraction for the people of Kazakhstan each winter. Slope Point. At the southernmost tip of New Zealand, where Antarctic winds blow without pause, there is a desolate stretch of land known as Slope Point. There, twisted trees stand in a permanent state of distortion, looking as if they've stepped out of a Van Gogh painting, forever bent by the unrelenting force of the wind. These trees cling to the jagged cliffs, where cold winds scream day and night, bending everything that dares to grow. Their branches don't reach for the sky, they twist sideways, curling into bizarre shapes. It's hard to believe anything could survive in such harsh conditions. In truth, the trees were planted by shepherds, intended to shield their flocks from the brutal weather. The Antarctic winds rush in unchecked, making every day at Slope Point feel like an endless storm. Part 7. Since the time of ancient sailors, there have been stories of a strange maritime phenomenon, a patch of ocean that suddenly begins to glow, stretching as far as 15,000 square kilometers, bathed in a soft, milky light. This is known as the Milky Sea. In the darkness of night, the water shimmers with an ethereal blue glow, as though some luminous substance has spilled across the ocean's surface. In 2005, The phenomenon was even observed from space. By 2015, the National Institute of Oceanography identified the source of the glow, a bioluminescent bacterium known as Noctiluca scintillans, often called sea sparkle. These microscopic organisms drift on the surface, lighting up the sea like millions of tiny stars in the water. Though similar to an algal bloom, the Milky Sea is so rare, it feels almost unreal, a gentle reminder that the ocean still holds mysteries far beyond our understanding. Leap Castle, Ireland's bloodiest and most haunted fortress. Amid the rolling green hills of Ireland, where crumbling ruins whisper tales of the past, one place stands out for sending shivers even down the bravest of spines: Leap Castle. Often called the most haunted castle in Ireland, it is more than just a relic of stone. It is a symbol of betrayal, bloodshed, and ancient curses. The castle was built in the early 16th century by the O'Carroll clan, a family infamous for a bloody history and an insatiable lust for power. Over generations, control of the castle changed hands in a brutal cycle of inheritance, rivalry, and betrayal, even between brothers who didn't hesitate to kill each other for the throne. When the Darby family took over in the mid-17th century, the tragedies continued. Under the Ryans, the castle remained a seat of power, where locals were expected to swear loyalty to the British crown, a move that earned them deep resentment. In 1922, a furious mob set the castle ablaze, destroying much of its structure. After so many generations of violence, many believe the land beneath Leap Castle is cursed. Witnesses have reported ghostly figures wandering through endless hallways, mysterious lights flickering in shattered windows, and phantom footsteps echoing on ancient stone stairs. The most terrifying of all is the ruined chapel where a priest from the O'Carroll family was murdered by his own brother in the middle of Mass. They say his spirit still lingers on the stairs, sometimes drifting straight through the windows. 2 ghostly girls have also been spotted quietly standing in the Great Hall. Then there's the Elemental, an ancient supernatural being said to have originated from the time of the Druids, summoned by magic to protect the land. Today, Leap Castle is privately owned, and the current owners have confirmed that strange occurrences still happen. For those brave enough, tours can be arranged, but only if you're ready to face the darkness that dwells within the blood-soaked stones of this haunted fortress. Popolis, the lost city in Bolivia's rainforest. Hidden in the misty boundary between the Andes and the Amazon basin, where dense jungle foliage conceals all signs of humanity, ancient stone ruins from a once great city have been uncovered, a city now known by a modern name, Popolis. No one knows its true name. No one knows who once lived there, what language they spoke, or where they came from. But the remains leave no room for doubt. Complex housing structures, meticulously planned roadways, and a centralized water system that outclasses anything previously known in the region before the arrival of the Spanish. Archaeologists believe Popolis may have once been a satellite city of the Inca Empire, or perhaps even older. Moss-covered staircases lead to nowhere. Intricately carved stone walls are now swallowed by roots and vines. Local legends speak of a mighty civilization forced into hiding by war or disaster, one that concealed its city so well it remained invisible even to satellite imagery. Popolis is still being excavated. Each stone revealed opens a new chapter in the story of pre-Columbian America. And if what's slowly coming to light proves true, Popolis may rewrite the entire history of a glorious past the world had forgotten. The Forgotten Village. Beside a motorway in England, a long-lost village buried for over 700 years has suddenly come to light. Near the M74 highway, archaeologists uncovered 4 medieval structures, silent witnesses of an era long gone. It remains unclear what these buildings were once used for. A handful of artifacts were found alongside them, including an ancient iron dagger, possibly used as a protective talisman against dark magic. Sharpening stones, spindle whorls, and several 17th century coins were also discovered, buried in the soil. Given the site's proximity to the highway, it's likely that more valuable relics still lie hidden beneath the asphalt. According to archaeologist Natasha Ferguson, the dagger was found directly beneath the foundation of one of the homes. In medieval England, it was common practice to bury weapons beneath buildings as a safeguard against both supernatural and earthly misfortunes. Still, no one can say for certain whether this charm ever truly worked. Chaco Canyon, the stone city of the New Mexico desert. Tucked away in the arid deserts of northwestern New Mexico, Chaco Canyon stands as a monumental remnant of a vanished civilization. From the year 900 to around 1150 CE, it served as the vibrant cultural heart of the ancient Pueblo people, indigenous inhabitants later referred to as the Anasazi. Their ancestors were not only deeply connected to nature, but were also visionary architects far ahead of their time. They constructed massive multi-story stone buildings known as great houses, each containing hundreds of rooms meticulously pre-planned, rather than being added onto gradually, as was common practice in that era. The construction of these complexes could take decades, even centuries, an enduring effort comparable to the building of Europe's great cathedrals. The layout of these structures often aligned with the sun, moon, and cardinal directions. Surrounding them were earthworks and intricate water channels, evidence of a profound understanding of climate and terrain. According to the U.S. National Park Service, these great houses were not built for permanent residence. Instead, they functioned as ceremonial, commercial, and cultural hubs, drawing people from distant regions for trade and religious rituals. But the brilliance of Chaco Canyon eventually dimmed. By the 12th century, construction halted, the people moved away, and the cultural influence of the canyon faded. The reasons remain unclear, though many researchers believe that excessive deforestation for firewood and building materials led to severe erosion, degrading the land and making it infertile. A prolonged drought lasting 50 years may have pushed the population to its limit, forcing them to abandon the canyon in search of water and survival elsewhere. Even more disturbing are the dismembered skeletons found during excavations at Chaco Canyon, suggesting possible acts of cannibalism. This controversial theory shocked many, as the ancient Pueblo peoples had long been viewed as peaceful and harmonious. Professor Christy Turner argued that such barbaric acts didn't originate with the Anasazi themselves, but may have been brought from the south, possibly by a violent and extreme religious cult from Mexico. His evidence includes 7 skeletal remains found along the Puerco River near the Arizona-New Mexico border. The bones showed signs of boiling to extract marrow and crushed rib cages, characteristics matching known ritualistic sacrifices in ancient Mexican cultures. According to Turner, it's possible this fearsome cult infiltrated Chaco territory, spreading terror and disorder, ultimately contributing to the fall of Anasazi civilization. However, other scholars disagree, suggesting these incidents were isolated, perhaps the result of battle, famine, or a lone deranged individual. Whatever the truth may be, Chaco Canyon still stands a stone epic of a society that once thrived in the desert, only to vanish into time, leaving behind mysteries yet to be solved. The Temple of Zeus. In Syria, recent archaeological discoveries have uncovered the secrets of an ancient temple once dedicated to the god Zeus. Excavations at Quanawat, assisted by the Directorate of Antiquities in Sweden, revealed small chambers, ancient corridors, and a curious water channel that once directed flowing water through the heart of the structure. So far, only the eastern portion of the temple has been fully unearthed, hinting at more impressive ruins still buried beneath the soil. The Temple of Zeus was built by the Greeks in the 1st century BCE. During the Roman era, Quanawat, then known as Kanatha, was a powerful and wealthy member of the Decapolis, a league of 10 cities, as evidenced by the many surviving ruins. The Temple of Zeus was just one of several magnificent structures in the city. Nearby stood another temple, built in the 2nd century, and dedicated to the sun god, Helios. Once grand, these structures have since crumbled, leaving only broken columns scattered across the ground. The city prospered until it fell to Islamic Arab forces, after which it steadily declined. Today, it's nothing more than a poor village. Yet students and local archaeologists continue to excavate the site, racing against time to uncover its buried mysteries before they are lost forever. The bodies beneath Niagara Falls. In 1969, a horrifying discovery was made at the base of Niagara Falls, where once the roaring waters plunged from dizzying heights. At the time, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers was conducting a geological survey to study erosion and assess the structural integrity of pedestrian bridges. To proceed, they diverted the river's flow to the Canadian side, temporarily drying out part of the falls. As the riverbed was exposed, what they found shocked everyone: the bodies of an unidentified man and woman. No one knew who they were, where they had come from, or when they had gone missing. Perhaps they had fallen by accident. Perhaps they had chosen to leave the world quietly, without anyone ever noticing their absence. Their remains had been submerged for so long that it was impossible to determine their time of death. But that wasn't all. Alongside the bodies lay an unexpected treasure, millions of coins glimmering at the bottom of the falls. These were the loose change tossed in by tourists over the years, part of a long-standing tradition of making wishes. Everything was collected, the coins and the corpses, and whoever ended up with the money likely walked away with a small fortune. A hidden treasure buried beneath the roar of the falls, lying unseen in the mist and thunder. The oldest mummies in the world. When people think of mummies, their minds often turn to the royal tombs of ancient Egypt, desert kings, preserved in gilded coffins beneath scorching sands. But the truth is far more astonishing. The earliest known artificial mummies didn't come from Egypt at all, but from the Chinchorro culture, which lived along the edge of the Atacama Desert on the border of modern-day Peru and Chile. In the driest place on Earth, the Chinchorro people thrived for over 6,000 years, and they began mummifying their dead as early as 7020 BCE. Initially, they relied on the extreme climate to preserve bodies naturally, but within 2 millennia, they had developed a method of artificial preservation. According to the Guinness World Records, the oldest known Chinchorro mummy is that of a child discovered in the Cameroons Valley, dating to approximately 5050 BCE. For the next 3,500 years, the Chinchorro refined their embalming techniques until the practice faded around the 1st century BCE. Unlike the Egyptians, the Chinchorro stripped the body of skin, organs, and muscles, preserving only the skeleton. They reconstructed the body using sticks and plant fibers, then sculpted a new skin from clay and ash. A special clay cap was placed over the head. Using this technique, they preserved nearly the entire form using nothing but natural materials. By comparison, Egypt's oldest mummy dates only to around 3000 BCE, making the Chinchorro mummies nearly 4,000 years older. A quiet civilization at the edge of the desert, yet they had mastered the art of preserving life after death, millennia before the rest of the world. The mysterious jade figure. A mysterious jade pillar, recently unearthed from an ancient burial site, has left archaeologists puzzled. The cemetery once held the elite members of a thriving Neolithic society in China, dating back to the 3rd century BCE. This exquisite jade artifact may hold secrets about one of the earliest societies ever to rise on Chinese soil. Carved into its surface is the image of a figure wearing an ornate headdress, riding atop a fearsome beast with sharp claws and bulging, menacing eyes. The identity of the figure remains unknown, and no one can say what the beast was. It might have been a shaman, a deity, or even an early prototype of the legendary dragon. The object is now housed in the Jiangsu Provincial Museum. It was found at the Lingjiatan archaeological site, which predates the earliest known Chinese dynasty, the Shang, who ruled during the Bronze Age in the 2nd millennium BCE. Based on this and other artifacts like ceremonial axes and wine vessels, archaeologists believe this society flourished at least 1,700 years before the Shang. Researchers also uncovered signs of vast rice fields, ancient fortifications, and systems of earthen walls and moats. Aside from these strange carvings of beasts and humans, almost nothing else remains of this civilization, leaving behind haunting questions about who they were and what they believed. Persepolis, the dying light of the Persian Empire. At the foot of Mount Mercy in modern-day Iran, a monumental ruin still stands in solemn silence. Persepolis, the once glorious capital of the ancient Persian Empire. Recognized by UNESCO as one of the greatest archaeological sites in the world, Persepolis was once the radiant heart of a civilization that lit up the ancient world. Construction began in 518 BCE under King Darius the Great. On an elevated stone platform, he built vast palaces, and his successors, including Xerxes I, expanded the city with majestic structures like the Apadana Hall and the Hall of the Throne. At its height, Persepolis looked like a city from legend, grand halls stretching into the horizon, countless magnificent buildings, and walls covered in intricate carvings. It was more than a palace, it was a city in miniature, the center of power and prestige for an empire at its peak. But then, in 330 BCE, the army of Alexander the Great marched in and ended everything. Not long after, fire engulfed Persepolis, a devastating act of destruction and one uncharacteristic of Alexander. But the Greeks had never forgotten. A century and a half earlier, Xerxes of Persia had burned Athens to the ground, and now, Alexander returned the favor. Today, only broken stone walls remain, yet through every shattered stair and weathered relief, echoes of a magnificent era still resound of a time when this city served as a beacon to the entire Eastern world. Though Persepolis now lies in ruins, it remains a vivid reminder of an empire that once touched immortality. The underground city of Nez, a secret network beneath France. Buried 22 meters beneath the surface of France, lies a mysterious labyrinth known as Nez, an ancient underground city cloaked in darkness and secrecy. With at least 300 interconnected chambers, it was once a self-contained world, unknown to most who lived above. Originally, it was a limestone quarry exploited by the Romans in the 2nd century CE. But after abandonment, local inhabitants discovered that the underground complex maintained ideal conditions for storing food and goods. Over time, the deep tunnels became storerooms, then shelters. During the Middle Ages, when war and chaos swept across Europe, the underground city became the perfect refuge. At its peak, as many as 3,000 people lived beneath the surface. They dug wells, built stables, ovens, chapels. Every detail was carefully planned. Smoke from fires and ovens was channeled up through hidden chimneys, completely masking the presence of the city below. Some evidence suggests that in the 9th century, Viking invaders discovered the entrance and even lived there for a time. But as Europe stabilized over the centuries, Nez was forgotten. It wasn't until 1887, when a man renovating his home stumbled upon a strange hole behind a wall, that the entrance to the underground city was reopened. The story of Nez reminds many of Derinkuyu in Turkey, another underground city lost to time and rediscovered purely by accident. Even today, Nez remains a living testament to the ancient human capacity for survival and ingenuity in the darkness beneath the earth. Alien base in Antarctica. A truth hidden in ice? In the frigid, desolate wilderness of Antarctica, a strange image captured by satellite sparked a frenzy of speculation. A colossal structure resembling an underground base, partially revealed along a snow-covered hillside. Since the image first surfaced, theories have multiplied. Some believe it is the remains of an alien installation dating back to a time before humans ever built cities. It appears that a massive doorway has been exposed by melting ice, along with what looks like ventilation systems buried deep beneath the frozen surface. The scale of this base is staggering, stretching for miles, possibly large enough to house an entire city. Some speculate that if it's real, it may not be a mere shelter, but a command center or launch site for an ancient extraterrestrial civilization. Others suggest it might be a secret human-built structure, or even the remains of a once thriving city that existed in Antarctica before the continent froze over. To this day, no official explanation has been confirmed, but the question lingers beneath the ice. What is truly hidden beneath the coldest continent on Earth? The Giant of England. Etched into a hillside in England, a massive figure carved into the landscape has stood for centuries, known as the Cerne Abbas giant. It has long been part of local memory, but new research suggests it may depict a primal god once worshipped in ancient times. For years, experts believe the figure was created during the Roman period, between 43 and 410 CE, but recent evidence suggests it may have been carved much later, around the 10th century. The mystery lies in the fact that there are no written records of the figure until 1694, raising the question, was it ignored for nearly 700 years, or simply not considered noteworthy enough to mention? Using modern technology, researchers dated the chalk used to form the image through optically stimulated luminescence. The results point to the 10th century as the likely time of its creation. As for its meaning, some believe the figure represents a forgotten deity named Hylth, once revered by Anglo-Saxon communities in the area. The vintage car fever. An urban explorer made the discovery of a lifetime when he stumbled upon a hidden collection of rare and valuable prototype cars, estimated to be worth over $1 million. The explorer, who identified himself only as Ben, had known about the secret compound for years. Eventually, he and a friend decided to break in. Inside, they found a Bristol Bullet prototype, a Bentley Continental Flying Spur, and even a 1957 Beardmore taxi. From the outside, the building looked abandoned. Shuttered windows and overgrown weeds gave no hint of what lay within, but inside sat a treasure trove of priceless vehicles. The Bristol Bullet, a 70th anniversary edition never released to the public, was valued at a minimum of $250,000. The 2008 Bentley Continental Flying Spur was estimated at $20,000. The 1964 Bristol 409 Bullet Speedster prototype, a one-of-a-kind experimental model, was worth nearly $300,000. Ben admitted he had no idea what he was walking into when he broke the lock. He assumed it was just an empty warehouse. In reality, the building had once belonged to Bristol Cars, the last independent car manufacturer in the UK. The company went bankrupt during the COVID lockdowns, leaving behind its forgotten automotive gems. The Holy Lance. The story of the Holy Lance begins in June 15, 1098, during the First Crusade. Legend holds that this was the very spear that pierced the side of Jesus Christ as he hung on the cross. After the Crusaders captured the city of Antioch, they were immediately besieged by a powerful Arab army. Supplies ran out, morale collapsed, and hope nearly vanished. In desperation, a peasant named Peter Bartholomew claimed he received a vision from St. Andrew, who revealed the hidden location of the Holy Lance. The sacred weapon, he said, was buried beneath the church of St. Peter in Antioch. When workers dug deep into the foundation, they uncovered the spear, reviving the Crusaders' spirits and spurring them to rise and defeat their enemies. To this day, the true whereabouts of the Holy Lance remain a mystery. The story has never been verified, though a fragment believed to be from the lance is currently kept beneath St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. It was presented to Pope Innocent VII in 1492, following the fall of Constantinople to the Turks. The Pyramids of Sudan. Roughly 150 miles east of Sudan's capital, along the banks of the Nile, lies a strange and forgotten land, home to more than 200 ancient pyramids, far more than can be found outside Cairo. Yet unlike the iconic grandeur of Egypt's pyramids, these desert relics have largely been swallowed by sand and time, overlooked by tourists and archaeologists alike. These pyramids are the remains of the ancient Kushite kingdoms, from a time when the Nile Valley was known as Nubia. Their first capital was founded at Kerma around 2500 BCE, and their architecture bore heavy influence from Egypt. However, it wasn't until around 700 BCE that the Nubian kings began building their own distinct pyramids, smaller, sharply pointed, and often painted in haunting shades of black. Despite their modest size, the number of Nubian pyramids still standing today is more than double that of Egypt. Tragically, their existence once faced serious threat. In the early 19th century, an Italian treasure hunter named Giuseppe Ferlini arrived in Meroe and destroyed 40 pyramids in search of gold and jewels, and he found them, glittering hoards of gold, silver, and precious ornaments. In the early 20th century, continued excavations revealed even more pyramids. Between 2009 and 2012, scientists discovered another 80 near the ancient village of Sedenga, dating to the 1st century BCE. But who knows how many more secrets still lie hidden beneath the shifting sands. Stone Age cannibal sacrifice site. In Germany, archaeologists uncovered a site that sent shockwaves through the scientific world, a 7,000-year-old mass grave believed to be the scene of brutal cannibalistic rituals during the Neolithic period. According to the BBC, at least 500 skeletons were unearthed, most bearing unmistakable signs of having been eaten. Shockingly, the remains included children's bones all cut and deliberately broken in ways experts say are clear evidence of cannibalism. Bruno Bisson of the University of Bordeaux noted that some bones even showed signs of having been roasted over fire. Still, traditional scholars remain divided. Some argue that the dismemberment may have been part of an unusual burial ritual rather than an act of consumption. But that theory is hard to accept. Researchers have confirmed that many of the bones exhibit bite marks suggesting the remains were chewed. Unless chewing the dead was part of Neolithic funeral customs, this may indeed be the remains of a community that ate not only their own, but also their enemies. We know little about the social structures or intertribal relationships of these early peoples. But in prehistory, the most common cause of cannibalism was hunger. When food became scarce, early humans turned to the most dreadful form of survival. In the case of the German burial site, scientists believe an entire village may have become a horrific banquet devoured by its own kind. The UFO that might be real. On October 19, 2017, a telescope on Hawaii's Maui Island detected something that stunned the astronomical community, a mysterious object flying through the sky. Initially, it was thought to be a rogue rock from deep space, accidentally drifting into our solar system. The object was named Oumuamua, meaning a scout from afar, in Hawaiian. Strangely, by the time it was discovered, Oumuamua was already on its way out, having looped past the sun like a silent visitor, making a brief stop before disappearing forever. Scientists determined it had come from the direction of the Vega star system. No photos were captured in time. Astronomers could only estimate its size based on reflected light. They believed the object was about 400 meters long, 10 times longer than it was wide, and resembled either a massive stone cigar or an interstellar submarine. Later, researchers concluded it might be a fragment of a shattered asteroid from another star system, drifting through the galaxy on a chaotic journey. But the question lingers, was it just a rock, or a piece of alien technology that just happened to pass through our backyard? Some theories suggest the object accelerated due to outgassing like a comet, but strangely, no tail was ever observed, and no gas was detected. According to the New York Times, several astrophysicists now suspect Oumuamua functioned like a light sail, a device propelled by starlight pressure. If true, it wasn't a rock at all, but a craft. The more we studied it, the more mysterious it became. It was the first object ever observed to enter and then exit our solar system, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. What was it? How did it speed up? Was it nature or technology from another world? For now, the mystery remains, and the night sky continues to whisper secrets we have yet to understand. Marine life beneath Antarctic ice. Beneath Antarctica's eternal ice, a strange discovery is baffling scientists. Researchers accidentally found bizarre sea creatures, sponges clinging to a boulder deep under the frozen crust. It is one of the most extreme environments on Earth, a place with no light and seemingly no way for life to exist. To see beneath nearly 1,000 meters of solid ice, the research team had to drill an enormous hole and lower a camera into the dark. In the eternal cold and silence, they saw living organisms fixed to rock stationary, with no sunlight, no visible nutrients, and no clear source of survival. Biologists like Hugh Griffiths were stunned. Until now, scientists believed sponges could not live in places so far removed from light and food. But clearly, reality has once again surpassed what we thought we knew. It appears these creatures have evolved over thousands of years to survive the impossible. They may live extraordinarily slow lives, barely moving, consuming minimal energy, and going long stretches without nourishment. Still, the great question remains, how can life endure in such absolute glacial isolation? Jesus and Cleopatra. Cleopatra, Jesus, and Julius Caesar, three names that seem worlds apart, yet some believe they may all belong to the same tangled bloodline. The humble narrative of Jesus' life in the New Testament may be far from accurate. Beneath the layers of history lies a story far more complex and far more surprising. According to the Bible, Jesus was born in a stable to a poor family, grew up to become a preacher, and was the Son of God, or so the Church tells us. But clues in both the Gospels and the Jewish Talmud point to a different origin. Jesus' family may have actually been wealthy, educated, and influential members of the Judean aristocracy 2,000 years ago. Hardly the kind of people forced to give birth in a barn. Over time, through centuries of revision, translation, and adaptation, Jesus' story was reshaped to resonate with the masses, particularly the poor. Even his occupation was likely misinterpreted. While tradition calls him a carpenter, the Greek Bible refers to him as an Arun, meaning master builder, a title more associated with Masonic architecture than simple woodworking. Some scholars believe Jesus came from a noble family and was a prominent figure in a Judean guild, possibly a forerunner of the later Freemasons. He was also highly educated and literate, at a time when 99% of the population was not. He mingled with elites like Zacharias and Nicodemus, and was supported by Joanna, the wife of King Herod's steward. Clearly, Jesus was no ordinary man, he was a member of the upper class. Ancient historian Josephus Flavius even equated the biblical Jesus with a man named Jesus of Gamala, a military leader and nobleman who owned a fortress and commanded 600 soldiers. Even the story of King Herod's fear at Jesus' birth hints at noble origins. Herod's panic and his order to kill all male infants was unlikely to be triggered by a poor child, but rather by the arrival of a royal prince who threatened the throne. When people called Jesus the King of the Jews, it may not have been metaphor, it may have been fact. This leads to a bold theory. Jesus was not only a prophet, but a powerful prince, highly educated, closely tied to nobility, allied with Persian magi, and possibly trained in Egypt. His real name may have been Jesus of Gamala, and he commanded an army. This opens the door to the possibility that Jesus was an exiled Egyptian prince, a descendant of the Ptolemaic dynasty. Cleopatra, the last queen of ancient Egypt, had a well-known relationship with Julius Caesar and gave birth to Caesarion in 47 BCE. After Caesar's assassination and the fall of Mark Antony, Cleopatra took her own life in 30 BCE. Caesarion, their son, was said to have been killed, but is that truly certain? Records from over 2,000 years ago are rarely clear. Documents show that in 4 CE, the year Jesus was born, a wealthy family from Egypt was exiled and resettled in Judea, accompanied by remnants of their power and 600 armed men, matching Josephus's account of Jesus of Gamala. Jesus was born 30 years after Caesarion, making it entirely plausible that he was Cleopatra's grandson. Perhaps his family once hoped to restore their power, but Jesus chose instead to start a new religion, the stolen heart. In Ireland, a bizarre theft took place, one that remains unexplained to this day. The thief stole no gold or jewels, but something far stranger, a withered human heart. A sacred relic, stolen and mysteriously returned 6 years later. Lorcan Ua Tuathail, known as St. Lawrence O'Toole, was the Archbishop of Dublin in the 12th century. He played a vital role in establishing Christianity in Ireland and once survived a brutal axe attack during Mass. Lawrence died on a mission to France and was canonized in 1225. Following Christian tradition, his body was divided and sent to multiple churches, his head to England, and his heart enshrined in Christ Church Cathedral in Dublin, where it remained for centuries. In 2012, that heart was stolen. The thief hid inside the cathedral until closing time, broke through an iron gate, and took the relic, leaving behind only 2 burning candles on the altar. Police found no leads. Then, in 2018, the 800-year-old heart resurfaced in a city park and was retrieved by authorities. No one knows what happened during its absence. Perhaps the thief believed the heart would bring them luck, only to discover it brought misfortune instead, compelling them to return it in silence. The giant sinkhole in Chile. In late July 2022, scientists in Chile were stunned when a massive sinkhole larger than a tennis court suddenly opened in the middle of the Atacama Desert. The hole measured over 30 meters across and twice as deep, almost perfectly circular, as if bored out by an alien machine. It appeared near a copper mine north of Santiago, but no one knew what caused it. The danger was so immediate that authorities cordoned off the area. Some suspected it was linked to nearby mining operations, but the London mining company insisted they had no idea how it happened. The sinkhole caused no damage to infrastructure or personnel. It seemed completely detached from human activity. Christian Zuniga, mayor of the nearby town, called it an unprecedented event. Fortunately, no one was nearby when the ground gave way. Had they been, they would have fallen into a seemingly bottomless pit with no chance of survival. It's terrifying to think that, at any moment, the earth beneath our feet might simply vanish. A global tsunami. On August 12, 2021, a powerful 7.5 magnitude earthquake struck beneath the uninhabited South Sandwich Islands, a remote British territory. 3 minutes later, a second quake hit the region, this time even stronger at 8.1. Earthquakes like these are not uncommon. What was unusual was what came next. A massive tsunami, powerful enough to be recorded across 3 oceans, the Atlantic, the Pacific, and the Indian. Though it caused no destruction, this was the first time since the catastrophic tsunami of 2004 that a wave was observed simultaneously in all 3 oceans. Now, scientists are trying to understand why some earthquakes trigger tsunamis while others do not. They believe it has to do with the depth of the quake's epicenter. Typically, deep earthquakes don't displace enough seafloor to create large waves, but this one did, pushing a giant wave outward in 3 directions. Had it been just slightly stronger, it could have devastated 3 separate coastlines and taken hundreds of thousands of lives. According to structural geologist Judith Hubbard in Singapore, the current tsunami warning systems may still fall short because we don't fully understand our own planet's behavior. That means the next tsunami might strike without warning and become the worst natural disaster of our generation. Volubilis, the ghost of a Roman city. Tucked quietly among hills near the sacred town of Moulay Idris, Zerhoun in Morocco, Volubilis stands as a lone ruin on the dusty canvas of history. But don't be fooled by its faded state. This was once the best preserved Roman city in the country, a vivid testament to a glorious era long gone. Volubilis was built before Christianity dominated the region, back when this land was part of the indigenous kingdom of Mauritania under Roman control. It was also one of the most remote cities of the Roman Empire. At its peak, Volubilis housed an estimated 20,000 residents, thriving through olive cultivation and olive oil production, valued commodities in antiquity. Its grand temples, opulent villas, and exquisite mosaic art sparkled like a jewel in the desert. But everything began to fall apart in 40 CE, when local populations revolted against Roman rule. Volubilis held out for a few more centuries before the Romans withdrew by 285 CE. With the rise of Islam in the region, many temples and buildings were dismantled. Residents moved to nearby mountains, leaving Volubilis empty and desolate. In the 18th century, a devastating earthquake brought further destruction. Stone columns collapsed, and arches crumbled into dust. Today, though only ruins remain, the soul of a once majestic civilization persists. Bathed in North African sunlight, ancient stones still whisper the story of a city once poised at the crossroads of culture, religion, and power, slowly forgotten by the march of time. Mysterious lights. On September 7th, 2021, a magnitude 7.0 earthquake shattered parts of Mexico. But the shockwave that haunted witnesses most wasn't the tremor. It was the sky lighting up in surreal shades of green and red as the ground shook. Clouds above glowed ablaze, turning the heavens into a scene out of a dream. The spectacle was so terrifying that many believed it signaled the end of days. People panicked and fled for cover. The earthquake's epicenter was near Acapulco, yet its tremors reached Mexico City, over 300 kilometers away. The strange lights blazed brightest near the epicenter, and to this day, science offers no definitive explanation. The most widely accepted theory is that these were earthquake lights, an EQL phenomenon recorded years before many major quakes, often appearing minutes to hours before seismic activity. In ancient times, people saw such lights as divine omens. Later dismissed as folklore, they only gained scientific credibility in the modern age when cameras began recording them. But acknowledging their existence doesn't mean we understand them. Some researchers propose that seismic stress distorts Earth's magnetic field. A 2014 study suggested certain rocks may release electrical charge under tectonic pressure, emitting a blue glow from the ground. These remain only theories. No one truly knows what earthquake lights really are. Beer, the vanished village in Brazil's jungle. In 1923, a team discovered the small village of Habir deep in the Brazilian jungle, but found not a single soul. Around 600 inhabitants had vanished. Doors stood open, possessions untouched, with no signs of struggle, as if the entire population walked away silently, all at once. Officials from nearby towns searched the site. In the village school, they found a gun fired just a day before. On the chalkboard, scrawled in hurried handwriting, were the words, "No salvation." A search party combed the area, but found no remains, no camps, no survivors. At that time, the story barely made headlines. Yet given Brazil's political turmoil in that era, many suspect the villagers were forcibly evacuated or possibly massacred. Even today, the Amazon rainforest remains dangerous. Illegal loggers and miners threaten, attack, and sometimes kill indigenous peoples to seize land. The tale of Habir first emerged in a Russian magazine. Many believe it is a myth woven from various South American oral traditions. Yet a few photographs purportedly from Habir still circulate online. While the village is gone, the Amazon is vast, and each year small communities vanish without trace. For some, Habir is a Brazilian ghost story. For others, it's a silent warning of what can happen in the shadowy depths of jungle where people can disappear and no one ever knows. High Bridge. Spanning the River Witham in the ancient city of Lincoln, England, High Bridge stands as one of the oldest surviving bridges in the world. Built in 1160, this structure is far more than a crossing. It's a living testament to centuries of England's layered history. What makes High Bridge truly remarkable is that houses were built on top of it. Only 3 such bridges remain in England today, and High Bridge is the oldest. It started life as an ordinary bridge. Around 1550, traditional timber-framed houses began to rise above it. Once, a medieval chapel stood there too, but it was dismantled in 1762. Today, the bridge is home to a small cafe, serving traditional English treats, plus a handful of tiny apartments. Its distinctive architecture draws the eye. Beneath the bridge arches, a narrow passageway allows boats to pass through. Locals jokingly call it the Glory Hole, as it's the only channel connecting the River Witham to the ancient Brayford Pool Harbor.